Good day, guys. Welcome to another episode of my Python tutorial series. My name is Eliaza, and you are watching EA Lego Academy. Today, we are going to be looking at the check button widget and the radio button widget. So, in our last video, we did an introductory tutorial on the graphical user interface, whereby we said that a graphical user interface is an application that comprises of a window screen with widgets on that window screen. And basically that's what I said to sum it up. So you can go back to my previous video because I don't want to waste time on talking about things in the last video, but I will just be doing references so that you would know where we started from. So we talked about graphical user interfaces and what they comprise of. Window screen with widgets on that window screen. And in our last video, we looked at the label widget and the button widget. And we said that there are classes inside the tkinter module. So we said we have a module called tkinter, and this module has a class called tk. Now that class, the tk class, allows us to display the window screen that will display widgets on itself. It allows us to display the window screen in which we are going to use to display widgets. Now widgets, they are classes. Widgets are classes. And we said that in order to display widgets on a window screen, we need geometry managers. So in the last video, I said that I was going to talk about the 3 geometry managers, but I ended up using only one, the Pack geometry manager. So I'm going to show you how you can use the 2 other geometry managers we have. We have the place and we have the grid geometry manager. So I'm going to show you how you can use the grid and then the place. So I did a video before, but I was not happy with the audio, so I deleted it. So that's why you are seeing that I have already started, or rather I did it before the grid, and I also did the place as well. So I've done it already. It's just for me to redo it again. So now initially we had, since this is the label widget, we had something like this. If you can still remember, if you are following from the previous video, label on my window screen, then the text, you can just come here and say hello world, and then that's it. And then you can come here and see lab.pack. So this was what I had in the previous tutorial. Now of course this will display a window screen that has the pack geometry manager on itself. So you can see we have hello world. Now you can choose to increase the size by adding a font to this widget, this label widget. Now I want to do something whereby I want to start with the place geometry manager, just to finish up what I didn't finish in my last tutorial video. So I said we have the place geometry manager, and it allows us to display widgets using X and Y axis. So the place geometry manager allows us to display widgets using X and Y axis. So let me use this, my PyCharm integrated development environment, as a case study. So now of course the PyCharm IDE is a GUI. It's a window screen, and all these things you are seeing are all icons, whether clickable or non-clickable. So now, since this is my window screen with icons, together they make a GUI, we start displaying widgets at the top left. So we start from the top left, whereby the right hand side represents my positive X, and then downwards vertically represents my positive Y. And of course the other side on my left hand side represents my negative X, and the top moving up represents my negative Y. So having said that, we want to display widgets using these formats. So what I'm going to do before I even start, I'm going to copy this my label widget 4 times because I want to repeat this label widget 4 times and display it at different locations using the place geometry manager. So mind you, today we are looking at the radio button widget and the check button widget, but I just want to round up or wrap up from where I left off in my last video. So I will copy it a few more times and paste it 3 more times. So now what I will do, I will change this to place. So place, and I will target the x-axis. So I'll make sure that it starts from 50 on the x-axis, and I will say y. It also starts from 50 as well. Now, since this one will be on the same line as the first, so I will just give them different names so that I can differentiate them. Hello World 1 and Hello World 2. Hello World 1 and then Hello World 2, Hello World 3, Hello World 4. I will come here, and so since this one will be on the same line as this, it's only sensible that they will have the same y-axis. But this will have a different x. I will give it 300 so that it can be far apart from the first one. And of course, if I'm looking at that, if I'm placing this one here, now just using these two as an example, the title of this my project and this my Git branch master, so that I can upload my code to my GitHub. So you can see that here, the developers, when they developed this PyCharm graphical user interface, or rather the IDE, it's also a graphical user interface. You can see that they all have the same y-axis. You can see they are on the same y, but they are on different x-axis. So that's why I'm going to make it on the same y-axis, 50. Now the next one, because the next one is on a different y, I will still make it aligned with the first one because the first one is on 50x. I'll make it align with it, and I'll come here and I will give it another y-axis. Let's say 100 is equal to 100, and this one too would be on another x of 300 and also be of the y of 100. Why? Because these two will be on the same line, this one and this one, and then this one and this one too will be on the same line but on different x-axis. So if I execute my code, you will discover that we have exactly that. Sorry, that was my bad. So I did not change the geometry managers for these ones too. So it's place, not back. So place. So you cannot use the value for place on the park geometry manager. You have to make sure that it rhymes. So now you can see that here I have my text displayed. Let me make them a bit bigger. You can just come here, give a font. So it's good practice to use fonts so that your text can be legible. So I will just copy this. So if you run your code, you will discover that you have bigger text. So that's how you can display using the place geometry manager. Now, the next one is using grid. So what I will do now, grid allows us to display widgets in rows and columns. So you discover that I can display this same label 1, this Hello World 1, Hello World 2, Hello World 3, and Hello World 4 in a grid format. Now, when you are using grid, just have in mind or just know that we always start at the 0 index in rows and columns. So we use rows and columns to display our widgets. So now, following that analogy, you can see that Hello World 1 and Hello World 2 would both be at the 0 row. but this hello world 2 would be at the 1 column, while this one will be at the 0 column. Now this next one will be at the 1 row and at the 0 column, and this one will be at the 1 row and at the 1 column. So in order to carry that out, you can just come here and change everything to grid. To grid, I'll just delete this and say row is equal to 0, column is equal to 0. I'll just copy that and change the values to save myself the stress. So you can also decide to give them different names so that you will not confuse yourself, but Python doesn't get confused. The reason is because you will notice that I'm creating the same variable names, but it doesn't have any problems identifying which one is which. The reason is because at this point in time, when I said lab.grade, it knew that I was talking about this lab. And at this point in time, when I did this, it knew that I was talking about this. The reason is because of what I talked about in my earlier tutorial when I talked about overriding values in a tuple. So it can be applied to any value you assign to a variable. At this point in time, when I created lab, it knew that this is the lab I'm working with. When I came here and I wrote the same variable name and updated the value, it knew that the new value of lab is this one. So whatever I grid here, it knows that it's this one I'm trying to grid. So that's just how it works. So row 0, column 0, row 0, column 1. Now this one, row 1, column 0, row 1, column 1. That is how it works. And you will discover that you will have the same thing. So that's that for using the 3 different types of geometry managers. We have looked at pack. Now we have looked at place and grid. So that now brings us to today's tutorial. So before we start what we have today, we want to define a few classes that we are going to be using in this tutorial. So we have the string var class. What does the string var class do? It's inside the tkinter module. It allows us to retrieve a value from a widget so that we can use that value in another widget. So I will take that again. It allows us to retrieve the value of a widget specifically as a string value from the name string var. It allows us to retrieve it so that we can use it in another widget. So that is what the string var class does. Now we have a parameter that we normally use in the parentheses of a widget. Now it's called variable. Now let's take for instance, I create a string var class, and in the parentheses of the string var class, I write a value there. In order for us to be able to retrieve the value, the string value that string var class is going to store so that we can use it in another widget, we would have to assign it to a parameter called variable. That's what we do. So we have to assign it to a parameter called variable in the parentheses of that widget so that we can. Now the parameter called variable will act as a placeholder so that we can be able to store the value that the string var class is going to hold temporarily so that we can use it in another widget. So mind you, we use a variable when the string var class has a value in its parentheses. I'll come in just a minute. All right. But when the string var class does not have a value in its parentheses, we use the text variable parameter to hold the value that the string var class is going to retrieve from a widget. I hope that makes sense. Then we have another parameter that we also pass to the parentheses of a widget. Now that parameter is called value. Now let's take for instance, if I use the string var class to retrieve a value from a widget so that I can use it in another widget, and I assign the string var class to the parameter text variable, not text variable, I would need another parameter called value, whose value will need to match the value that the variable parameter is holding of the string var class. So if I should try to use the string var class to retrieve a value, if I try to use the string var class to retrieve a value from a widget and store it in my variable parameter, I would need the other parameter called value. I will need the actual value of that other parameter called value for its value to match the value I assigned to variable using the string var class. So I'm trying to say that the value assigned to the variable parameter must match the value assigned to the value parameter. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so you will see it in code as we start. So now I'm going to start with the reason why I'm saying all this is because now when I write the first code, when I talk about the radio button, which is what we are going to start with, we would need all these concepts down so that we can be able to know how we can manipulate them. So now, having said that, you want to come, I'm assuming that you have already opened up your PyCharm and you have been following my tutorial series all this while. So you want to open up your integrated development environment, PyCharm, and you want to go to that your folder, right click on it, come here to new and click on Python file. Now I will come here and say radio button project, click enter. So now the first thing you want to do is to import tkinter. So you want to import tkinter, but before that I want to create a radio button such that there would be a value that will already be clicked on. So I didn't even define what radio buttons are. So they are widgets that allow us to display circular icons that once they have been clicked, they can't be unclicked, but instead you would need to change your value to another radio button. That is, you will need to click another radio button. So now this widget is mostly used in forms when you are filling out forms either online or maybe there's an application that you are trying to select a gender or something like that. So these are use cases or applications of this widget. So we want to see how we can create it in Python tkinter. So the first thing you want to do is to import the tkinter module, and then you want to create a variable that will represent your window screen. Come down here, say tkinter dot the tk class that allows us to generate the window screen. The next thing, you want to create a title for it. Now I will give it a title of radio button project, just the same name as my Python file, and I will want to give it a geometry. So geometry is just the same thing as size of your window screen. So geometry is not the same thing as your geometry manager. They are two different things. I already explained that in the first video. So I will give it a width of 500 by 400, and I also explained this. Just go and watch my previous videos. Now I will create a variable that will represent the string var class I talked about. I will call it con. Now the string var class is a class inside the tkinter module. Now I will create a list that allows me to hold a series of string values. I will call it courses. Now I will have physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics. So now I want a situation whereby as I run my code, the mathematics radio button would have already been highlighted or will already be highlighted. Now, how I will do this? So now the string var class must have something in its parentheses in order for what I'm trying to do to work. So what it takes the window screen and then it takes the value that you want to match. So it takes the value that you're going to use to match the value you will also assign to the value parameter. So I will come here and say chemistry. So by doing this, I know that when I run this code, Once I get to chemistry and it matches this value, I want that radio button to already be highlighted. So I will create a for loop, of course, and I will just call it C in courses. So as I'm looping through this list, I want to be creating my radio button. I'll come here, say tkinter radio button, open a parenthesis window, then come here, I'll say text. Now the text would be the value that I'm looping, C. Now come here and say variable. So variable is equal to con, and then I'll come and say value. So I'll explain this before I run. The courses at the one index. So what am I doing here? Now when C iterate over this list the first time, rather before I even do that, you want to pack it. So I'm using pack. Now you can feel free to use another type of loop to carry this out. I might just keep it in as a bonus. I'm trying to quickly work with time so that I can finish this tutorial. But at the same time, I don't want to rush. I want to deliver optimally. All right, so when the loop runs the first time, we can see that C represents physics. So it would display the physics text just beside the radio button. And at the same time, the value assigned to variable con is chemistry. Chemistry does not match physics. So, the variable assigned here from con, you can see that here. All right, sorry, that was my mistake. I'm not going to do it this way. I'll come here and use C instead. All right, so that was my mistake. So when I run the for loop the first time, C is physics. So to display physics as a text. But now the value assigned to variable is chemistry. At that iteration, chemistry does not match physics, so it will not highlight or it will not click on that radio button. Now it will pack it, you will see it there, physics. Now it will start the iteration the second time. On the second iteration, C is now chemistry. It will put chemistry as a text beside the radio button. Now the value assigned to variable is chemistry. To now check, does chemistry match with the value at that iteration? It does, yes, chemistry. You will discover that it will highlight that radio button, pack it, start again. C will now be biology. It will do the same thing. Biology as the text, chemistry, biology, they don't match. It will pack it without selecting it, start again till it gets to the last list, and then you see your result. So now you can see that we have something like that. Let me make it bigger so that you'll be able to see it properly. So I can just come here and add a font to it. All right. So you see that the chemistry radio button has been selected. Why? Because the values match. So that's how you can do that. Now, just in case you want to use another type of loop, maybe the while loop or something, you can just come here, comment this one out, and then for the while loop, I will create an initial variable called con. I'll just call it count so that it can make sense. This would represent count. I'll come here and say while. So while count, now I'll give count 0 because I'm assuming that I will start from the 0 index while looping through my list. So while count is less than the length of courses, so now this is going to run as long as the value of count is less than the length of my course or the courses. Then you want to come here and paste it. So what I'm going to do is that instead of saying text, I'll just come here and say courses count for each iteration, and it's also the same thing too. I'll come here and I'll do courses count. So it will give us the exact same thing, but in order for it to work, you want to come here and increment the value of count. Rather, after you have packed, you want to come here, say count plus plus or equal to count plus 1. So what's happening here is that for the first iteration, count is equal to 0. Now, the element at the 0 index is physics. It will display physics there, and to check if the value assigned to variable con matches physics. They don't match, so it's not going to tick it. You can see that it's still doing the same thing. Physics at the 0 index. Then it will now pack it and then increment it by 1. 1 is now 1. 1 is still less than the length of courses. The length of courses is 4 elements. 1 is less than 4, it will still run the while loop. It will now display chemistry, and you can see that the value assigned to variable con is chemistry. Chemistry is equal to the element at that index, the one index, chemistry. So it will highlight and select the button. So if you run that, you see that you get the exact same thing. So you can either use a while loop or you can use a for loop. I'm just doing a revision for you so you can build on this. All right, so that's how you can create a radio button. Now, what of the check button? How do we do that? Now, I want a situation whereby as I run, as I create a program, rather, or as I create my check button, I want a situation whereby a particular check button will already be ticked. So I'm going to still use this list I have here. Just come here to your variable and data types, new Python file, and you call it check button project. Okay, I already have it. So I'll just go and delete it and create it again. That was now the reason why I have it is because of the last video. I did not like the video I did, so I deleted it. So I'm trying to do it again the second time. So you come here and you see check button project. Please don't forget to leave feedbacks just to let me know on what you feel about my video. It helps me a lot. All right, tkinter. Now you can come here, create a variable to represent your window screen, tk. You can come here, give it a title, window.title, then just call it check button widget. You come here, give it a weight, say window dot geometry. I'll give it 500 by 450. Come here. So now I'm going to create that same list, but let's just type it together so that we will not we'll have a feel of our code. Come and say physics, chemistry, biology, and then mathematics. All right. So now I want to come here, create a for loop. Now before I do that, I want to come here, create a variable called data. Now it's still the same principles I talked about. When we have a value in the parentheses of your string var, so we all know that string var is used as a class to retrieve a value as a string format from a widget so that we can use it in another widget. Now I said that when we have values in the parentheses of the string var class, then we use the variable parameter as a placeholder to hold its value. So I'm going to come here and say value is equal to true. What this simply means is that um, check whichever check button widget I pass this value to data, it means that it's going to tick that check button widget already as I execute and run my code. So I will come here, still the same thing. I'll say for C in courses. Now I will create a conditional statement and say if C is equivalent to chemistry. So I want a situation whereby as I get to chemistry, I want to tick chemistry alone. I don't want to tick the rest. So I will come here and pass my check button widget. I'll say check is equal to tkinter check button. And then you pass your window screen, pass your text, because you want the text to be C. Then you want to pass your variable. The variable is going to be data. That's it. So it means that it's this check button that you want to be ticked the moment you run your code. But if it is not chemistry, so you also want to pack it too. Don't forget that. So dot pack. What's going on? All right, I have a freeze up in my code. Okay, I started working again. So you also want to give a font so that you can be able to customize the size. I'll give it Arial 30. You can feel free to use Times New Roman or some other font style. But if it is not chemistry, you want to just paste it and remove that variable. So you don't want it to check any other value. You just want it to only check chemistry. That's that. That's that. So I'll adjust my code. So if I run my code, you will discover that it will only check chemistry. So before that, let's just run it so that you can see. Okay, I did not run my main loop. So each time you run your code, you want to make sure that you are running your main loop, which allows us to continuously generate the window screen so that we can see our code. Now you notice that chemistry is the only check box button or check button that has been selected. The other ones have not been selected. Now the reason is because of the code. Now I will just do a brief explanation. Now for the first iteration, C represented physics. It will now check if the elements at that index, if it is equal to chemistry. It is not, because for the first iteration, C was equal to physics. So this will not get executed. From the tutorial we did on conditional statements, if you can remember, we said that code in a conditional block will only get executed if that condition is true. So for the first iteration, we can see that C is not equal to chemistry, so it will not execute this. And we were told that the moment an if condition is false and we have an else statement, the else statement will execute whatever is there. So we discover that since physics is not equal to chemistry, to come here and pack a check button displaying physics beside it, and to start the iteration a second time. For the second iteration, C is equal to chemistry, you can see it's correct. Then to pack chemistry and allow us to check it, because I set value is equal to true in the parentheses of the variable class. And you can see that because the string var class, sorry, the string variable class or string var class. So now the string var class has something in its parentheses. That's the reason why I'm assigning it to the variable parameter. I hope we got that. So it will keep on running. The for loop will keep on running till it gets to mathematics, packing the other check button widgets normally without ticking them or without selecting them. So that's how you can create a radio button widget and a check button widget. And also, you can also decide to select another check button widget, even though when you executed your code, it's selected one already for you. You can also choose to select other ones as well. And also for the radio button too as well, you can also choose to change your selection to another radio button, apart from the fact that it selects one already by default when you execute your program. So that brings us to the end of today's episode. So if you liked my video, please hit the like button. If you feel like it's going to be of importance to another person, please share. And if you want me to do more content like this, please hit the subscribe button. And also, please also endeavor to leave your feedback in the comment section, because it does me a lot of good. It allows me to know areas I need to improve on. So till next time, it's goodbye for now.